As a fair warning, this video might be really hard in the eyes of some viewers, realistically, all of them, but if you're sensitive to things like flashing lights, well, please be safe. Borderlands 2 is full of countless playstyles. People tend to have their favorites, and near agnostic of what I do, I get people telling me all the time about why I should have been using something else instead. So just this once, what if I listened? What if I give the people what they want? What if I were to afford you the opportunity to make this video a choose-your-own-adventure? Choose your window, pick your poison, and that's your Vault Hunter. What if I played Borderlands 2 as everyone at the same time? 6 characters, 1 controller, and oh god, this was a bad idea. Here's your window layout. If you get confused, then bam! By the power of editing, I can add labels. But that being said, do be prepared for this to turn into an all-around mess. Right off the bat, this is what the game looks like. This is as good as it's getting. This is as synced as we shall see. Observe our bottom left compatriot Zero, though when crossed with everyone else, you'll notice that despite being controlled via the same method, nobody's quite looking the same way. Zero in particular here is the least so. He isn't a persistent issue, but it as a whole is. And this is where I'd like to say that this is held together by hopes and dreams. Walking short distances without dying is almost impossible, and the audio sounds like this. Until Jack dies, this is my life. To get everyone back at least sort of in line, I could interact with things like quest givers, vendors, or whatnot to hold some characters in place temporarily. A tool I'd need often. I would like to stress though, they're really not that close. I mean, as soon as they get to walking, the terrain is an issue that will exacerbate every minor difference. You'd think using corners and whatnot could help line people up, and you kinda can, but what you gonna do for the camera? Even if you can get the rotation right, they're different heights, so resetting it doesn't fix it. Speaking of problems though, combat in a 3-dimensional space. And as you can see, it isn't going well for anyone involved. Melee is king right now, and let's all just take a moment to appreciate what all is going on here. Currently, my computer is running 6 instances of the game. Fun fact, you can and will get suspended from shift servers for logging in too many times in a short time frame. Kinda like this. Also fun fact, you can be suspended in really weird ways, where you have one instance that doesn't really get the same pop-ups as the other, meaning you desync even in the menus. Meaning you need to restart all 6 instances, because I can only really launch them all at once or not at all. And from there, I need to first change my monitor settings. See, to make this work at all, I'm running multiboxing software to control all 6 after a batch file launches them on my main monitor. I then need to change my primary monitor to my secondary monitor so I can hide the taskbar because it absolutely wouldn't let me any other way. Then I had to fight with redoing the settings for the multiboxing software I was using, which involved a lot of tinkering. Also, this is where I'd like to thank the amazing Ms. for making this possible. I know just enough about computers to get myself into trouble, not get out of it. So when I brought this to them asking if they could help me figure it out, and they delivered, well, I literally did ask for it, Ms., you beautiful bastard. Thank you. And also curse you. Why would you let me do this? You're a monster. And also a great person. That being said, if you can't tell how badly out of sync everyone already was by the visuals, then in so many words, I was very not in the same place with everyone location-wise, and I did need to go farm to stand a chance with at least most of them being able to beat Knuckle Dragger on account of the eldritch nightmare that was my screen, and not having weapons of any kind. So I went to the peak where, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but it was genuinely hard to push a button to complete the first possible mission. I had planned on doing my normal farm of having enemies leap over the edge, but in so many words, that was not happening, not in a million years with the number of inputs that are being dropped. So we went to the other DLC, in which I've farmed far too many times over the course of far too long. In case you don't know how this works, you show up, open a door, then screw around for a bit while Mordecai slowly kills things for you, you get experience from the kills, and you need to bail out before the objective is complete. I've timed out about 156 seconds before the cutscene plays after loading in, completing the mission, but I like to play it extremely safe because let me provide you with a list of every other place I can reliably farm for experience under the current circumstances across everyone at once. For the remainder of the game, I have absolutely nowhere. Cool, that sums up my options. Sounds fun! This was nerve-wracking. Even just passing through doors like this is genuinely a struggle. If you've tried herding cats, this is worse. It's much worse. In combat, we'd get events like these, where one Vault Hunter was fighting for their life, and the rest were fighting ghosts. 2 Hornets that I couldn't use due to rules that I don't honestly think most people read in the description later. We were off to clear out Liarsburg, a place full of foes and pitfalls. In many scenarios, one Vault Hunter would be doing reasonably well, a couple might be wandering about, others would find themselves stuck and or dying in obscure parts of the map that are fundamentally difficult to locate, because nobody examines parts of the locations quite like somebody wandering in effectively random directions. Looking in random directions due to desyncs and dropped inputs and minor things like Borderlands usually being inconsistent with geometry, spawn locations being ever so slightly different, camera sensitivity changing while one character's reloading and the other's aiming down sights. The gearing process was unsurprisingly lopsided, with only some of them getting firearms sometimes. Usually of different varieties and effectiveness. Actual inventory management was basically out of the question without intentional desynchronization, which was doable but slow. Combining that with how fast most gear becomes irrelevant, most of my characters were perpetually unprepared for one reason or another. Okay, do not jump, right? I just need to not jump, and I can kind of sync them back up. No jumping. No jumping. No! Fuck! No! No! I had one rule for myself! Using save quits to at least kind of anchor us, we still often ended up in different places, fighting our own battles. Krieg and Sal were doing relatively okay. Maya would be spending time with the wildlife. I at least kind of got them together for a united event, but that was all about to fall apart. With a lot of work and even more luck, you can herd your murder children into new use stations to at least sort of get them together by way of getting them all killed around the same time and not touching anything until you spawn back. This would be about as long-lived as the hunters themselves. I don't keep track of my death count in these runs for a variety of reasons, but this time, a lovely member of the community, Ivy, has done the honor themselves. Against my warnings and urging to not for their own sake. Every fall, every detonation, every time one of them was shot to death has been counted over the course of a run that took a lot of hours. If you want to count things, then you can, but frankly shouldn't over on Twitch, where we've been doing these live, and if you'd like to know just how deadly this run is, stick around until the end. They put up with a lot to get that information. One of the chief problems I'd face on the way to dealing with Flint would be that even if one of them reached a new U, there's one more or less just below. Should my focus wane, and I swear thy name be Bruce if my focus were to wane, I can, would, and did run them off cliffs, undoing any progress they'd made. The run up to Flint was rather uniquely hellish in that I could undo it without much effort, with multiple people at once. You may also notice, because even the menus get messed up easily due to things like deaths, things not opening, and so on, characters weren't even always on the same quest. A problem I'd at least get better at solving by desyncing select characters to get them back. The specifics as to how are frustrating, but also far beyond simple. Trust me, this game does not make you try to get desynced. While everyone had their unique issues, except Gage and Axton, spending too long on any one character would result in spending far too long everywhere, and having written an hour-long script once, maybe another day, but not this one. Salvador cheesed Flint. It was a common theme and methodology. Sending Axton into the next map served as a good way to prevent him from getting lost beyond recovery, sort of just sidelining him. Eking every one of them through their trials and syncing them via a save quit, they'd hold a certain sense of togetherness that simply couldn't survive first contact with combat. Bullymongs truly lived up to their names. Also, while vendors can work to hold some people in place, it can also lead to accidentally selling your gear off multiple characters that desperately need it, which did happen a few times. And the fun thing about dying a lot is I could almost never afford vendors. Selling things on purpose was so uncommon. I can't actually remember doing it, meaning you can sell off your gear without hope to get it back, which I also did. And then regearing is, of course, strange. This run was a hell of an experience. Not one I'd recommend, but not one I'm gonna forget either. It managed to make the mundane genuinely hard. And I can't believe I'm saying this, I wouldn't blame you for not believing me, but driving is one of the most consistent things in the game. I never kept the whole group together through anything, but I kept them the most together while driving. And I don't know how to feel about that. That's probably not true. I'm at least somewhat confident in stating a sense of discontent, annoyance even. It is strange. Turns out, saving Reese is as easy as letting him die 6 times over, and across all 6 characters, I'm sure they killed at least 20 bandits. Turning in a lot of quests, and shortly after save quitting to reset character locations, we got what we asked for, and man, I should have specified. I'm not sure what caused this. Now, while some of us were helping out around Sanctuary, the others were just getting lost. A joke with many windows. We stopped in to spend some Iridium, I think for the first and last time. I don't recall, but I know for a fact that even just walking through Sanctuary was painful, so that in conjunction with my bad memory, I just didn't stop in much. Despite doing so being genuinely a great idea. If nothing else, dying gives you ammo back, so even though we fired probably thousands of rounds into the sky, topping up was a non-issue in most encounters. Wondering about clearing up tasks before heading to Frostburn, though, we got the nightmare scenario. First, one of the instances crashed, meaning we had to restart all of them. A time sync to get a game sync, but worse still. While you may notice that only one character is currently holding a weapon, well, I'll give you one guess which character actually saved. All of the rest were completely wiped. Those files don't exist anymore for some reason. So instead of restarting, because I really didn't want to, I copied the gauge save, removed all of their equipment, and changed them in the save files to be the correct characters. To be entirely fair, their XP values did change. Beyond that, they are strictly worse versions of themselves. If this isn't an acceptable compromise for you, fair enough. But being in Frostburn without gear was terrifying for all involved. I was over the moon when I managed to just find a gun on Zero. The poor bastard. If only he was good. And yes, I know Critical Ascension exists. I never got it. Skipping ahead, everyone had their issues as they slowly got to new use further in, one by one, but none quite as severe as poor Krieg's. Look at him. Replaced by runtime errors. I do want to clarify, those are load-bearing errors. They're mandatory to run this at all. Watch what happens when I launch it. Of course, though, the real goal here was to just land the skip to end all skips. And I mean, they all landed it, just not successfully. So we went back to try again, and it could have gone worse. Statistically, I managed to bridge that gap with 5 times the number of characters that most players do. So, nah, but I did get it. This isn't here to brag, if anything, quite the opposite, and also, when next are you going to get to see the jump made quite so beautifully? As for what came next, it really wasn't that bad. Not fast, but Lilith picked up a lot of the slack. Much like many machinations of our society, I could ignore the pain and suffering of the grand majority of participants while waiting for things to be dealt with for me. I understand there is probably a lot more Lilith than most people would like, but aside from the badasses that would spawn in, this place tends to be pretty relaxed. Except during the 100 times enemy multiplayer run. If you haven't seen that one, then, well, nobody can truly deny that it was certainly one of the runs of all time. It does also help that this game is made of spaghetti, and enemies are more likely to break than work. In every scenario. I'm okay with this. For having gotten through the Lost Gear fiasco, and for some reason this being the only time that ever happened, I did then get to go pick up new gear after the septuple teleport with the nearby chest. A rare maneuver to be sure, and also gear being directly in my way is a godsend. After some of the cleanest driving you're ever gonna see, we had to hunt cars to upgrade our fleet of sparkle wagons. Followed by some less than stellar driving, but I mean, aside from all the times we had to reload the map and ignore the myriad of crashes, it could have been worse. In so many words, again, cars ain't that bad. Not exactly cozy, but comparatively so. Why, they're so smooth, I bet someone could comfortably drive them with only the minimap as a purely hypothetical. Cough cough, lol gas mask, cough cough. Getting them to open the door was trivial, as sort of was abusing the barrel technicals to beat Badma. It sorta works. Juggling which Badmas are in play is a bit difficult, just trying to make sure they don't all flee. Already falling behind though, we went all the way back to Sanctuary for a while. A far too commonplace of visitation. The stronghold wasn't as bad as you might think, but it absolutely was a game of New You juggling. Throwing a person ahead, hoping they'll be fine to respawn while everyone else catches up. When it came to the dreaded toilet room, the grand majority came down to some careful slope plays. Against all odds, snipers are really friggin' nice. Finding a solid one on anyone was a massive boon. Fun fact, rocket launchers? Not so much. They usually resulted in me blowing myself up on one character while trying to live on another. With great effort, and also coward strats, keeping the group together was kind of possible, in that it could theoretically be done. This is not to say that my efforts were particularly fruitful, but oh lord did I try. Right up until the next section where things were falling a rampart. See, it's a pun where... you know what, just forget it. I ended up spending a bit falling off of ledges on loop while trying to get people far ahead enough that we could pretend everything was okay. Wait, did that bandit just jump off a cliff? That's what I've been doing. I've been teaching the bandits bad things. Hellbent on not letting anyone head to the gulag, we used this neat trick called repeatedly reloading the map, which put us next to the fast travel by Warden, letting us try as many times as we needed to get a clean Warden kill on everybody. And we needed a lot of those. Both kills and, relatively speaking, attempts. Rollins, you know not what we've gone through to get you out of your confinement. I'm gonna need you to do us a solid later. Despite the struggles we had with things like pushing buttons, it was surprisingly effective to use the giant fire showers to light Varkid's ablaze for Mordecai's. Even kinda got them together. I do want to be very clear, nothing in this run was easy. Walking from point A to B was hard. Opening menus was hard. I want to stress, pausing the game. One of the most fundamental parts of most games was not trivial. Talking to Tina, with her being in a bunch of different places across the map full of enemies, bumps, barriers, and so on, it was not easy. At least not comfortable. But in the grand scheme of things that I did, it wasn't that bad. Please ignore where 0 is. We're not talking about that right now. Did we get all of the bombs? Yes. Was it clean? Not even close. But, importantly, did any of us get hit by a train? I don't think so. I don't know for sure, but I'm at least fairly sure we didn't, which is either an achievement of how we all did and didn't die, or a condemnation of my ability to split my focus this many ways. I tend to enjoy it being split 2 ways. Varies, but 2 is comfy. Videos, music, etc., all alongside a game. Pretty comfy. This, though? I never thought I'd be so happy to see a porta potty. New gear, my beloved. This run is interesting to me for a number of reasons. Some relate directly to how I've forced myself into having essentially a lack of build. All of my characters are awful except maybe Gage and or Axton. They're fine. But there's something so painful about this. Something so claustrophobic. Either trying to carefully not run into problems when helping one, or forgetting and barreling through the whole group. There just isn't often a good solution to literally anything. And it's frustrating in a sense that is so incredibly hard to describe, and I say this because I want you to recall, and if you haven't seen the videos, then you'll be hearing this for the first time, so those exist if you want to see how. I have beaten Wilhelm with only shields. I have beaten him with recompense. I have beaten him with the godforsaken basic repeater. The literal first gun you can get. And I didn't use damage glitches, secondary sources, or some weird workaround like amp shields to get it done. Without even a macro to my name, I pulled the trigger every time by hand to put the cyborg in the grave, because that's the kind of person that I am. And this still had me struggling. It was absolutely a side effect of me rushing, but trying to curb that impatience was fundamentally a part of the challenge. I wasn't just trying to do something hard, I was trying to do something exhausting. The mental and emotional strain that eats away at you as you stare down the barrel of the rest of the game, knowing you're already taking deaths to a rush job, that's part of it. And it's rough. Not gonna lie, a couple of nights after beating the run, I found myself dreaming about it. I don't tend to remember those, and I wear glasses. A really strong prescription because my eyes suck. I tell you this because multiple times I woke up seeing my vision split 6 ways. I was confused, disoriented, and briefly struggling to function. It was weird as hell, and I'm used to not being able to focus my eyes super well, but it was something else altogether. I've done a lot of runs now, but not one that got so deeply into my head as to mess with one of my senses like that. I'm not even sure what the takeaway is here, but I don't think I could put this video together without relaying that I woke up seeing like a fly. So, yeah. This run was weird. It was really weird. I'm not sure what caused it, but everything was going relatively fine. Relatively. fine. Until we reloaded, then all hell broke loose, and I've never had a more immersive experience of the city being bombed. It was deafeningly loud, and I'm not including the audio for that here. Maybe for an outtake / highlight video at a later date, but not here. It was horrible. Not gonna lie, I'm not even mad that I got teleported out. Y'all are screwed up there. Well, I probably wasn't much better off, but at least we had a chance to cool off. Against all odds, getting the Vault Hunters through the hellscape, area was fine. Ish. As much as it could be. Except for the couple of times they wandered back into the waterway, because a couple of them did just that while I was fighting the Gluttonous Thresher. Similar story, while Axton is off defending a beacon, I gotta ask, where is Gage? What is she doing? We're over here at least sort of trying to defend the beacons, and I have no idea what she's doing. Except very obviously not contributing. But I hear you say, oh, she's just down by the stalkers. It's not even that far away. I hear you. Defending this nonsense. Well, you were so focused on her that you failed to answer a different question. Why is Axton over there? What is he doing? Herding cats has nothing on this. If I were to look away long enough, I'm fairly certain I'd find Salvador on Elpis. One by one, though, we'd make our way back, and even in Sanctuary, I'd find my hunters dying while trying to, get the rest there. A common theme. I can't even have you all fast travel to the same place together. Bunch of insufferable little shit. So look at this for me, will ya? Look at how they're almost aligned, didn't hit any obstacles, didn't press weird buttons, just drove here, and I can't cross the bridge without sending people careening off the side. The tiniest of variations cause hugely compounding problems. Automating this game would be a nightmare. Cough, cough, McQuagle. Cough, cough. Wait, was I supposed to read the parts that say cough, or am I? I would begin Angel's Trials, as one tends to do, by killing a bunch of stuff. That is more or less the crux of this game, but look at him. Look at Zero over there, being useless. Yeah, everybody falls, many must, but Zero gets so gear dependent in his left tree, and when enemies become uncrittable, I did not enjoy the bottom left corner of the screen this playthrough. Now, I may have gently suggested in the past, left the implication that I think Bloodwing is arguably one of the easiest bosses in the game when using a specific glitch that I've taken to calling blood pumping. I believe this was subtly readable through the time that I said that with this strategy, she's genuinely one of the easiest bosses in the game. I understand how such a hidden meaning could go unnoticed, and I also understand that such a sentiment could be considered insulting. Demeaning, even, to such a large bird companion. So, I'd like to clarify that I didn't even need said bug this time around to settle things in around 16 minutes, which doesn't sound fast, especially on normal mode, but this run was sluggish at the best of times. 16 minutes is breakneck fast. It felt good actually having something handled for the first time in a while. For the record, I may have used it a bit. In so many words, I don't know what meaningful difference it'd make to check, and 16 minutes across 6 different screens of footage is a lot of checking as only a tiny fraction of a really long playthrough. Frankly, more impressive than the fight, I managed to lead them back out of here. Crazy stuff. Which is to say crazy slow stuff. Claptrap, my friend. This once, I will not give you 5. I would not be so cruel as to grant you something so paltry. For you, my friend, I will give you 30. Or, more accurately, 29. On the way to recruiting a man who's both incredibly helpful and also harmful, how about a status update on the crew past me? Zero's good. Gage is good. Maya's good. I think Salvador's lagging behind. I think Axton's currently running backwards. Maya's running off a cliff. Brick's initiation was more messy than usual. You can look to Maya to see the work she's doing with Goliaths. You could look to the others to see them doing whatever it is that they're doing. To be honest, those Goliaths were more or less my entire strategy. Just hoping they'd hard carry, but they did also do the thing where they just stopped moving across multiple characters. So that in conjunction with me dying even outside of the arena, well, fast I am not. How goes the escape from loaders after, me? Brick, I can't see the target circles, you know this. Hang in there, buddy. You'll be free of the place. And if we follow time like a stream, you'll become me doing this instead. Meaning there's an even more current version of me possibly able to view this and only able to watch in horror, unable to warn me of what's to come. Especially true once I'm dead. Time is weird.
At least that's another hurdle down. What's the news, Rollins?
To be honest, I got no idea how to get past a door that'll only open for Jack.
Oh, Nightmare Fuel. My favorite. What I found is that not one voice actor sounded pleasant like this. Varying levels of horrifying, but damn. Also, I know in the grand scheme of things, nobody's really gonna care, but I managed to drive 5 out of the 6 cars from point A to B successfully. If we just ignore Zero like I do on a daily basis, then we can celebrate this little victory for me. You don't have to include yourself in that if you don't want to, but also you can't take it from me. You can't see it, but I'm doing a little dance, and you can't stop me. Jack's body doubles can, though. Damn. Like, sure, Krieg won, but he otherwise managed to fend off 5 other would-be assassins. Sure, their guns are really underleveled, and they are a little bit too, but still. Statistically speaking, I haven't survived that many attempts on my life. I wish I could say it's because the number is 0, but family is fun. Remember, you owe nothing to anyone for blood relation. True family is those you choose to keep around, regardless of genetics. Anybody who says otherwise is probably pretty toxic. Also, remember to refresh your equipment and yourself once in a while. Zero, your damage is just making me sad. Even Sal is pretending to pull his weight, and he's more gear dependent than you in most other circumstances. Also, screw navigating the rest of this place. This is just chaos. Was I ready for the hell to begin? I don't know. What even is ready in the grand scheme of things when there are deeds that need doing? While not everybody would have a great time dealing with the constructors, Krieg kind of surprised me. Sure, he's among my 2 favorite hunters, but I really overestimated just how much he needs to sing. Yeah, you can do UVHM with him gearless, but here I was thinking he'd at least want a build that supported what I was going for. Turns out, nah, just his action skill seems like plenty for a lot of things. And a weirdly good luck with specifically him getting solid snipers settled the rest. While everyone had varying difficulty in getting past the invisible targeting circles, everybody did also kind of just go the route of coward strats in dealing with the harder constructor. Because I'll be honest, I think I just know too much about the game to play it totally casually. Some things just work, and I'm going to use them. Now, of all the problems in the world to face during the bunker fight, well, you may be aware that the bunker has a one-way fast travel, and while trying to reload, I press the same button as interact. And while jumping, I press the same button as accept. You may see where this is going, and where it went, a couple of times. To be 100% fair, I'm not exactly sure that's what happened every time that it occurred. You can also just die in the previous area and it'll spawn you back at the very beginning for some reason. I know this isn't technically the fault of the slow and rather dull boss. I understand that. Frankly, I don't like it normally though, so this was insult to injury. And you aren't required to hate the bunker, but all my homies hate the bunker. Your move. And yes, Zero is the easiest kill by far, surprising nobody that's ever seen or heard of Boar. It has now served its one and only purpose for the playthrough. I've accidentally sold my guns and have died too many times to get them back. If you ever wanted a side-by-side comparison of their relative heights, then you're in luck. If you ever wanted that followed by a really disappointing attempt of sending them down an elevator at the same time, then hot dang are you in the right place. If you wanted that, followed by dying a lot in Angel Core and having Axton specifically bugging out, and having a completely invincible injector, thus meaning I had to go back to do his side of things pseudo separately, then that's a really specific ask, but I've got you covered. Overall, Angel Core was just a lot of mobbing. And I mean, I've been there, I've done that. There's even ammo to help when a character made the mistake of living too long. Not a common thing to occur in the run, but it did happen. Helps there were fewer cliffs to find, though some of them did find their ways outside, resetting Angel Core. Even got this really weird visual bug for it. I'm not sure what actually causes it, but it just kind of gave me these boxes. I don't think there are any greater ramifications, but this game confuses the hell out of me. After a whole lot of death, a veritable entirely too much bloodshed, not because of the ethical concerns, but because it was just so goddamn inconvenient, we were able to take the key. Secure safety for the world, our trials were over, and the game could come to an end. Rollins, I know what I asked you for earlier, but that's really more of a liquid. No, wait, Jack, can I at least touch the key before I go? No. Fine, then I'm robbing Marcus for all he's worth. Not much, it turns out. Yay, driving! And to the wrong objective! And multiple characters had to walk anyway, because locomotion is primarily commotion. Sawtooth Cauldron, my favorite.
right next to those frame rate issues we picked up somewhere along the line. Possibly during the massive amounts of farming we had to do at the start of the stream that day. Also possibly because this game was never really well built, and I'm running 6 instances of it held together by the hopes and kindness of a friend of mine and the spite of me. With our powers combined, this is getting done one way or another. Now, I know the Death Closet isn't exactly beloved the community over, but I'm gonna say something that's arguably controversial. I'm really glad it's here. Whoops, I died. Guess I'll get right back into it. Congrats, you got rid of me for all of 5 seconds and reset your health, but I'm alive again, now with more ammo. So while yes, it had its hand in contributing a lot of deaths to the run, what didn't? I, for one, was happy to not have long walks between things. That's just convenient. Granted, some of them had a much more difficult overall experience in execution and execution. What can I say? This pocket of safety is just nice. Ironic, given the alternative just across the way. All in all, the ambush was less than successful, much like my attempt to synchronize the destruction of Boombringer. Now, I had been given a lesson via brutal beatings over the last, rest of the run thus far, so the buzzard fights were anything but synchronous. And some non-Axton, Gage, Maya, and/or Salvador characters were having some issues, as was often the case. Except with Krieg. Krieg normally does fine. Excluding him, though, usually the case with the rest. I did genuinely try to tie up the boxes that way, but do I even need to say it? After the absolute mess you've seen so far, have we not reached a sort of understanding yet? Is it too late to change my official opinion on driving multiple cars at the same time? Ugh, never mind. Walking is still worse. Though soon would begin the section of the game that I tend to think of as a break, and that it was not. Awkward are the cars that crash and collide, dastardly are the delays caused by every input, oh so ironically driving me toward dismay. Even the menus fell to malaise, causing this venture to drag on even at the end of its days. Crass are the corridors that flow and ebb only in stops and stutters of the mechanical variety. Jammed so packed no elegance can get through, merely cheese oozing through the cracks formed of rigidity in their design. Basically, running through was the ticket everywhere, but, the whole living thing was hard on account of everything we've discussed up until this point. Also, I'm not sure how or why, but Zero just kept falling out of the map. I've never had that happen before here. Why is this a thing that you could just stumble into? Repeatedly. You see the weirdest corners of the map when you have no meaningful control over where a character's headed for long bits at a time. You'd be amazed just how little anyone got permaslagged. Somehow, of everything I did on foot, the rush to the next location might just be the single most successful. I'm not gonna pretend it was clean, but I managed it without any deaths, without any random out of bounds happening. I didn't blow myself up. Frankly, I'm taking this door as a win, which I'm gonna need. I stopped to try to do some inventory management to get stock grenades without just losing important things. If I was being more honest with myself, grenades were effectively used only a few times across the entire run. Losing them on everyone wouldn't have been a big deal. Getting inside the info stockade would range from running for my life with Krieg, Zero, and Gage, to doing the Saturn skip on Axton and Maya, after clearing out the constructors because it killed her, and even going to hell with Salvador. See, 130,000 still feels huge. Why are there 3 of them? Why were there 3 back-to-back exploders? What is this nonsense? I couldn't agree more, Nightmare Fuel. I couldn't agree more. Initially, I thought I could maybe get away with just launching barrels inside and hoping for the best. You can technically, get them inside, but doing so likely would have just resulted in a horrific desync, so I didn't bother, and staying outside wasn't yielding much. I probably could have lined up one at the expense of the others, but admittedly this resulted in a half measure that got everyone killed more than anything else. I figured this portion of the game would be relatively easy with the spawn point facing us directly at the door, just look forward and shoot. While they say 2 heads are better than 1, after this I'm inclined to disagree, favoring a too many cooks in the kitchen way of looking at it. When you turn all of them and one dies resetting their view, but nobody else's, congrats, you're one step closer to having no feckin' clue where you're shooting. If every direction is forward, then it stands to reason that every direction is backward. By progressing the goals of one, you harm the rest. You move them backwards in time and space, and undoing that will of course cause the same to occur to the rest. Compounding inward as the wants and needs of the many are ignored for the few, their pleading is ignored by a system that acts without care for their well-being. No sense of morality nor justice bogs down the cogs of the machine we're faced with. It simply is. It simply must be. A refusal to participate is out of the question, and participation is surely suffering. An alternative is illusionary, and we're faced with countless foes, knowing we've been stripped of the tools to face them by the contract that binds us together. We're faced with the mark of maturity being raised above all else as the willingness to acquiesce. All else is disorderly, and disorder is childlike, so grow up. Smile and be joyous with a system built to disassemble all that you are, all that you will be. Grow content in discontentment, for it's the only option, and you must choose. So they say. Heroes Pass was full of many things, like bricking and refusing to progress things with Maya. A couple of characters failed to slip by the constructor. Overall, it was kind of a mess. I've had worse, but I've also had a lot better. In the end, everybody had to fight through at least the grand majority of the place. If, of course, we ignore how many times we left Brick to progress things while checking in on alternative bricks in the parallel timelines. Those were really nice of him. Sure wish he would have stayed with us. Or, come with us to help Maya. Or at all, after I accidentally traveled to Iridium Blight, forcing another run-through on Sal. That was nice. Jack was... he was a fight that I did. It took a while. It was slow. It was painful for multiple hunters. It was just agonizingly slow. He's never a hard fight exactly, just one that either proves possible or not. He's very binary, by virtue of also being incredibly buggy, which would absolutely prove to be how he'd go down for Poor Zero. Surprising nobody, primarily underleveled, undergeared. Seriously, some of their guns were around like level 23. The warrior was similarly really slow. Salvador and Krieg were the greatest source of synchronicity between the hunters because, well, in the grand scheme of things, despite it being the goal, there was kind of anything but in a lot of portions. Limitations imposed across each other by each other, but if I had to describe the run in a word, it'd be discord. Just utter chaos. Over the course of the run, there were 1,103 deaths. On Gage. Just Gage. And she had the fewest. As long as you're not counting Roland, Jack, or that random bandit in the ramparts. Though Maya's count does technically go up if we consider the third game. But here are the counts across all of them for a grand total of 8,070 deaths. Ironically, 0 has the highest number. Thank you again to Ivy for far too much counting. And I'm not sure what to make of this beyond hoping I never get anywhere even close to this death toll again, because holy hell. I guess we can take this as an objective order of who the best characters are from least to greatest. No possible contests to that. But it's easy to feel overwhelmed, knowing you can't control those around you. After all, how many places do you think you can truly be at once? Turns out, personal answer, not 6. Even when they march toward their destruction, no matter how clearly you can see it, they charge just as blindly. Sometimes it's disheartening knowing how closely we're all tied regardless of individual wishes. Truly, we are each a cog in a machine, spinning well beyond our hearts or minds, and that can be a terrifying thought. Knowing how little you mean in the grand scheme of things. After all, cogs don't move things. Gears do. Every rack needs a pinion, every gear needs its companion, so carefully engineered that should they be damaged, should even a small piece fall to disarray, it jams, fails to function. Every cog has its place, even if it's not the one you'd think. You can't move anything. I can't, but we can. If we're all so willing as to move together, because life doesn't happen in the grand scheme, it happens in our little circle. And you matter to us. I'd like to believe that we can choose the gears we're attached to, and even if it doesn't seem like it, that we can make the world just a bit better with every rotation. Always fighting to turn the right way, no matter how much force or friction we face in opposition. Multiple characters were built for multiple people, and I think there's just something so much more beautiful about seeing them work together rather than, well, trying to fix everything myself. It's a bit much, and I'm not even kinda okay at it. Bringing in 6 moonshots to a beautiful chorus of death, I do believe that marks the end. Can you beat the game as everybody at once? Yes, and also no. Really depends on what your personal criteria is, but I think I'm about as close as I'm gonna manage. As I receive one final insult from the game, an object getting in the way of starting the end all at the same time, I hope you've enjoyed your time here. I'd like to thank my lovely channel members as well as Twitch subscribers for your support, as well as your patience in how long this took to put together. Overwhelming is sort of an understatement for this whole thing. The prospect of something a bit less complicated is enticing, to say the least. If you've made it this far, then I suppose I can only want that the experience wasn't too dreadful for you. You probably know how to use social media, and I hope that means I'll get to hear your thoughts now and our future outings. If it's any consolation, I'd also like to thank the amazing Cryptid Ness. She went through great lengths to make emotes for both Twitch and YouTube, and I'm very grateful to her for it. She also tends to stream on Twitch if you're interested in seeing what she's up to in the description. She streams a lot more regularly than I do, and my sister is a cool person. Anyway, there will be fewer perspectives next time, I promise. But until then, remember to stay safe, spread some kindness in the world, and I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.